Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10. It's been 10 seasons of empowering businesses such as yours, hand-holding and guiding you in your growth journey. I'm Sunanda Jai Seelan. On the show tonight, we are bringing you as part of a limited edition series that we're doing here on the 10th edition of the show. Every Thursday, a deep dive into India's biggest unicorns. Two such unicorns in focus tonight. First up, I'm speaking with Open. Also in the hot seat tonight is Amagi. Come back and talk really about your, the personal side of your entrepreneurial journey. First and foremost, I would want to call it family owned and run, because one of the other co-founders is your brother, one of the co-founders is your wife. What is this model? How do you make this work? Because we speak with a lot of small businesses, and for 98% of them who are family owned and run, and we always try to understand the successful businesses. How do you ensure that this relationship is working in a successful one?
So firstly, yes, I have out of the 4 co-founders, 2 of them are family. So we don't still call it as a family run business. And for us, this is the 4th startup which we are...
The 4 of you doing together?
Together.
Okay.
3 of us doing together, basically.
Okay.
With Dina, this is the first startup we are doing together.
Sure.
With Mabel, apart from the startups, we also have worked in other fintech companies like PayU and Citrus, part of senior leadership. Now, we don't really now feel that, okay, the family part is like getting into the business. Probably when we started the first business, whatever mistakes we have to do as a husband and wife or a family, we had done probably in the first business. But over the period of time, you also become very conscious, and you also realize that, okay, in today's world, if you really need to build a right culture, if you try to bring in the family aspect into that part, it can actually be a deterrent, basically. So it's very important that you don't take decisions in the bedroom. At the same time, it also has certain advantages of, as you rightly said, for the Indian small businesses, where you have like a family, together. Like especially entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. You have to go through a lot of ups and downs, basically, and that's where sometimes it gives a lot of comfort, basically, when the people are at your home are also involved in this part.
Another unique thing, and I found that quite fascinating in all the research I was doing about you, is the fact that you didn't complete school.
Yeah.
That has not been a deterrent at all. Is it important in the entrepreneurial world to have that fancy degree? And in your case, it's not, but has that ever sort of come up?
I think the debate should not be whether you should go to school or these things. I think if a dropout become successful or raising funds should not mean that, okay, people should not go to school. At the same time, I do believe that, okay, a formal education, it's good, basically, in terms of your skill sets, but entrepreneurship is like the military training, right? You can't learn it through a book, basically. It's all about the experience and the skill sets that you bring in. So
you're saying hands-on training more than anything?
More than hands-on training. And secondly, in my case, probably I was, reading. I used to read a lot, basically, from my childhood onwards, because I always wanted to become a journalist. So there are multiple other ways in which you can actually learn these things. Now, somebody taking the same path and saying that, okay, I'm not doing my 10th standard and now I want to do startup, it cannot be compared as an orange to orange. So I don't think it's not about like the formal education versus the thing. At the same time, if you're able to, in my case, I didn't find too many deterrents. There were organizations where, I got rejected for an interview, but the same organizations later selected me, and I was able to change the policy, saying that, okay, it's not about the education alone, basically. And education is actually a good way to filter people. I completely agree that. And especially when you have like thousands of resumes coming in. But at the same time, there are like a lot of people who have the right skill set, but probably just they don't have completed the graduation, or they don't have a MBA degree. That should not be a deterrent for this thing. things. So I think nowadays even companies like Google, Amazon have changed their policies, and even companies like Open, we have changed that policy. So I don't think it right now really matters, basically.
And I was just going to come to that. You ensure that at least a large percentage of the resumes that you receive here at the organization, you're not just looking at fancy degrees, but you're actually looking at skills. How does that work? And just give us a sense of why that perhaps is crucial, and for you, why it's crucial that you look at doing that.
So we primarily look for the skill sets and the domain expertise somebody actually brings into the table for that particular role. And at the same time, we also have people from Harvard and IIM and IIT as well. So we don't really actually differentiate saying that, okay, you don't have a degree and we should have a less preference, nothing like that. So we give importance to the skill sets and domain expertise. And we also have around 35% of our people who had actually been probably considered to be non-employable by other companies. So these are the people who probably would have taken a sabbatical after their marriage, or people who, because of certain challenges they face in their life, they couldn't take up a job. So we actually trained them, and we found that, okay, they are actually like super productive in the organization. So these are like generally the things what we look for hiring.
Does it become more expensive to have a model like this? That you're hiring someone, you're training them, for an entrepreneur who's watching this to say, I would love to follow that method as well, but then how do you do it?
I think I'll just take a simple example of like someone who, after college, who couldn't actually take up a job and got married and got separated with a child. Now, for 10 years, like just because she has not had an experience, nobody was willing to hire her. But when we actually give her an opportunity, we found that, okay, those people actually have grown up the ladders because, they were just waiting for that one opportunity. They'll be super loyal. They'll be ready to actually learn new things. And if you really look around, like, these are the kind of people who are actually because at the time when your attrition rates are very high, especially in the startup world, if you can actually groom this kind of people, the cost of training is also not that much. It's a little bit of an effort that you actually put probably a separate team basically to incubate them or nurture them the initial days. And then, I think that has actually worked really well for us.
And this thing that you have, this passion that you have for diversity also extends to gender diversity. 70% of your senior leadership comprised by women?
Yes. So 70% of our senior leadership is women. For a very long time, we have a 50-50 women and women gender ratio in the organization. Now it is at around 37%. Again, here we don't really differentiate between like a male or female. It's just that, okay, we try our best to actually give them the opportunities basically in terms of like, because we do believe that a good gender equality or gender diversity actually helps in creating a good culture, because culture is like the DNA of this organization. So these are things which came naturally in the organization. It's not something which is very mechanically being put forward in the company, like, okay, I should give this percentage to women kind of thing.
Okay. How can more entrepreneurs and small businesses ensure that they're focusing on diversity? Because I think somewhere in the scramble to grow and all of that seems to be getting lost, at least here in India. You don't see too many businesses that are talking about this emphasis on diversity.
I think it's all about, like, if you really understand that, okay, building a great work culture is very important for your business growth. And if you actually look on that, then you will figure out that for getting a good culture, then gender diversity is like a very critical part of it. And it can really add a lot of value it's not about like creating the gender diversity. It can actually directly proportional to the growth of the business.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue talking about the core business model, the top opportunities and the top challenges when it comes to the fintech space, because you've been associated with this industry for such a long time now. If you can do sort of a look ahead and say, this I foresee will be some of the challenges, but this is how perhaps you can overcome those.
Right. So I'll talk about the opportunities and then come to the challenges. So the real opportunity for us is like we have 61 million MSMEs in the country, and we have just barely touched the surface. So there is a lot more room to grow this. At the same time, we're also seeing that a lot of our banks which partner with us, they're also looking to now launch neo-banking solution to their customers. And they realize that, okay, if some player they have to actually look for building this platform is open, because we have built for ourselves. So we actually created a separate unit called Banking Stack, where today we are actually working with the top 15 banks in the country to help them launch their own neobanks. And especially this is globally we are seeing a lot of banks coming to us for this as well. So in through open.money, we are looking at tapping the potential of the 61 million MSMEs, and through the enterprise division, we are looking at powering a lot of these global banks to help them launch their own banks. So that's the way in which we look forward from a future to build a global fintech brand out of India. That's always been our aspiration. Now, in terms of the challenges in this space, some of those challenges are positive challenges. For example, now the entry barriers have been reduced for new banks, probably compared to what we started it, which means there'll be a lot more competition, there'll be a lot more niche focused banks. So we should always we should also always look at the competition and the new players that is coming into the space. Secondly, our business requires a lot of partnership with the banks, and we touched upon the regulation part as well. So these are the other areas where probably where is a lot of dependency on a bank, because we don't have our own license basically, so it can have an impact on your product or the service. So these are primarily the main challenges which we foresee from them.
Time for a quick break. On the other side is Amagi. Do stay tuned, back in just a moment. Welcome back with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. In the hot seat tonight, our second unicorn is Amagi. We were shooting with another unicorn not too long ago, Open.
Right.
And the founder has one-upped you in the sense that after this 10 standard, he said...
Anish, yeah.
Yes, Anish. Or he didn't even finish out his 10 standard, but has gone on to become such a successful entrepreneur and a unicorn. And for him, what that experience of not having, perhaps gone through the so-called formal education is that it has influenced his hiring decision. He says, we as a company are more empathetic and are more open to hiring people who don't come in with those formal degrees.
Correct.
Has that perhaps also influenced maybe to some extent your hiring decision?
Yes, it does. We do have a very lenient policy in terms of education. Obviously, as a company that we've even had people who dropped out of college and come in, and I'm quite empathetic to those sort of people. Fundamentally, in terms of wanting to leverage what I call a diverse set of thought process. Much more original in thinking, because you're not kind of colored by all the different schooling which conditions you a particular way of doing things. I think to that extent, refreshing thought process comes in from people who kind of dropped out as well. And again, not because I have, but largely I see that as a trend line as well.
So the question I asked him, which I also want to understand from you, then how do you sort of, perhaps is there a standard metric that you use when you're looking at people to hire? How do you sort of standardize the process then?
No, a couple of things. I don't think educational qualification is a standardization. Again, three things is important in our hiring model, right? And again, they're very core what I call first principles thinking on foundational elements. And in fact, I've gone into interviews where somebody told me that they love history. And we've had full questions on history, nothing to do with what they want to do.
Okay.
But the idea is to kind of say, hey, are you good in whatever first principles that whatever you learned?
Sure.
Are you passionate about something? That's important for you.
Sure.
Second is, do you have the learnability skills?
Sure.
Because everything you're going to do is new things. As a company, we always want to be the bleeding edge of doing new things. We will fall, we will learn. Are you kind of somebody who's ready to learn through the process?
Sure.
Third is problem solving skills. We are here because we need to solve problems. Are you really good at it and you want to really do that as a passion? These are three core fundamentals we look at. Not really specifically about education or a competency, and all of that is secondary to the process.
Okay. So for an entrepreneur who's watching today's interview, and we ask all of our unicorns who join us on the show, your advice in terms of how you should be raising that first paycheck from your investors. How did you prepare for it? What were your lessons? What, as sort of like do's and don'ts do you want through this answer to be able to give our viewers?
2 or 3 things, right? In an early phase, when you're actually trying to raise capital, 3 things are important. Your conviction on the business is super critical. It is your conviction has to be reflected in the story that you tell your investors. It is about storytelling in the end of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I recommend saying. Don't be flowery about your storytelling, but literally talk about the truth, talk about the vision that you're going after.
Okay.
Because entrepreneurs have a unique ability to imagine the future and ability to express that imagination and be able to paint that canvas of how it will look like.
Okay.
Is an extremely important part of the process of investment. Second thing is be truthful as an entrepreneur. Talk about your fears, the risks that you see, the execution possibilities, and also the passion that you bring along. Because if I'm investors would love to understand the person behind it. And in early phase, a lot of bets are mostly on the people, the teams that are going to really address it, and not about the markets can change, products can change, but really the people are a super critical part of the whole equation.
Okay. What if perhaps, so from what you're saying, if I've understood you right, you're saying you have to be absolutely clear as to what the big picture is.
Correct.
What if you're an entrepreneur who's in an industry that's growing? Say, for instance, a Paytm when they started out, perhaps would have imagined that they will be in the space that you're in.
Correct.
So what happens in that scenario?
No, more than the conviction is more important, not the market reports. And again, we face that problem day in and day out, right? Our market, when we got into the business, people thought it's a very small TAM. The total available market is much smaller. We were believing in a future which is larger. We believed that there'll be a whole virtualization happening.
Sure.
So it's your belief and your conviction that matters a lot more than a market, because market reports typically are trailing indicators, not leading indicators.
Okay.
Because entrepreneurs have to be ahead of the curve in terms of their thought process and vision of where they're going.
Fantastic. One question that I do have on your business here, and you were talking about how everything is going to be hosted in the cloud, is a question on data privacy, and I'm sure you get that often. How do you respond to that?
True, 2 aspects here, right? Again, with the core technologies that are evolving, it's like, see again, this is the most crass analogy that I could come back is in terms of where would you put your money today? Do you put it in your locker because you don't want anybody to be exposed, or would you put it in the bank? Technically, we've all moved to the point that we trust the banks to do what it is, right? Similar is the way I see public cloud and cloud infrastructure to come in. With all the right set of software infrastructure for managing privacy today, I think they are as secure or even, in fact, more secure than actually keeping it yourself.
Okay.
So for businesses, we recommend a lot of times that public cloud infrastructure is much more secure and much more data privacy compliant than what you can actually do yourself.
Since we're talking privacy, I must talk government regulation. Has that kept pace with the kind of changes you're seeing in the industry?
It is hard. So regulations typically follow innovations because innovations are extremely ahead. I think regulations try to catch up eventually to do that. By over-regulating or regulating it early, we kill innovations. At the same time, but not having regulations can also be a big challenge. And we've seen it in multiple industries where if you're too late for regulatory, then it becomes a wild west, and the technology might kind of trample itself to some extent. So you need an adequate balance in some sense. But I think governments are starting to realize how to kind of start to put a framework in place to track innovations and be able to drive some of these regulations and regulatory mechanisms in place, right? So hopefully, I'm optimist. So I actually feel that that'll all settle down in a good balance.
Could you call out the top trends for our entrepreneurs when it comes to just the entrepreneurial ecosystem in your own industry? Your industry is niche, so not really advice for someone who's perhaps looking at your industry, but just as an entrepreneur, what would you want to call out for them?
No, I think it's an exciting time to be an entrepreneur. In fact, I always, when I wake up every day, I'm thinking, okay, I'm too old for this. Maybe I should have been born in an era at least 20 years later. I think tremendous opportunities exist. And the reasons are multiple. One is we become a globalized world. It means opportunities exist across the globe. And thanks to internet, it's providing us an opportunity to be able to serve the world sitting anywhere across. And in fact, I don't think India actually has an advantage. It could be any country anywhere across the globe. That's where we see. So globalization is a big, important trend. Second is the confidence of the entrepreneurs today is extremely high. Sometimes irrational exuberance, but I think a lot of times great confidence, because it's important to be a rebel if you want to kind of change industries and businesses. Trying to break traditional businesses needs a lot of guts to go after it. be ready to face failures, but also try to look at some things where you can actually be disruptive. I think I see a lot of young entrepreneurs in that sort of path in terms of wanting to do that, which I think is an extremely highly confident new entrepreneur generation. It's super important for the country.
Sure.
The third aspect is obviously the environments. The environment is much more conducive today, both in terms of capital, in terms of the political equity of what you need from a country standpoint. All of that's coming together in a much, much better fashion. And more importantly, the local markets evolved. In that sense, the maturity of being able to deliver services, for example, in 2000 when we started the company, first company, I don't think there was a local market for us, anything we built. Right? Okay. Versus what we're seeing tomorrow is a tremendous, robust local market for a lot of the products and services. I think it's a tremendous value. I think it's a what I call the Goldilocks phase for entrepreneurship. A lot of things coming together. I think it's just the individuals have to come out and be able to drive the change. And it's important for the country that we have more and more entrepreneurs, tens of thousands of entrepreneurs changing things and creating a better world for all of us. Absolutely.
We're all of us are talking Meta.
Okay.
I don't know how Meta will work for your industry, but
it is a very relevant aspect for as far as our. If you look at metaverse as an extension to entertainment and education and communication, all of that, we kind of straddle the same world to some extent because we're in the video experience space, literally. So we do see a convergence of sorts that's going to happen. In the next 4 to 5 year time frame, I don't see that as happening.
A last question, if you can talk to us about what advice you want to leave our entrepreneurs with, given the wealth of experience that you've had in your entrepreneurial journey.
A lot of them come and think entrepreneurship is a shiny world of money and valuations and others. But I can tell you exactly the opposite is what it is. You have to be in the trenches.
Some part of it is still of valuations and...
but again, that's a very small part of... if you look at the depth of the country and the sort of things that we're doing and sort of... because what you see is a 10-year journey, which is in the trenches. So most people don't see that as an important... It needs patience. It needs luck, for sure, in terms of what happens. It's not something that everybody can... We can all be hardworking and yet not have the product market fit easily. Those are realities of life. So entrepreneurship, you get in primarily because you're passionate about it. You're ready to really work hard. And really, like the Bhagavad Gita says, we don't know. You might not have a result for it. Do your karma and then be part of it. And not look for anything, fundamentally. And it might happen, it might not happen. Success is not guaranteed. And in fact, it's exactly the reverse in terms of success. So you need to be passionate about it. This is not a career choice. It's a life choice, right? So it's important to have that sort of conviction to do this.
Bhaskar, such a pleasure having you in the Leaders of Tomorrow.
Thank you.
Out of time on the show tonight. If you have any feedback for us, do let us know. Our contact details on your screens as we speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.